This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Do you ever find yourself playing the budgeting game? Well, with the Name Your Price tool from Progressive, you can find options that fit your budget and potentially lower your bills. Try it at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law. Not available in all states.
Welcome to The Bridge, the show that bridges the gap between Eastern and Western medicine, science and spirituality, physical and energetic health. If you're a leader seeking to heal from within, ultimately achieving the pinnacle of health and well-being for your mind, body, and spirit, then rest assured, this show is tailored just for you. I'm Dr. Elizabeth Rodgers, the Sherlock Holmes of health. I'm a trailblazing Harvard-trained epidemiologist turned transformational health coach. Basically, I find the clues that every other healthcare practitioner missed because they were looking in the wrong place. Welcome to today's episode of The Bridge, a transformational health podcast with yours truly, Dr. Elizabeth Rodgers. And I am so thrilled and happy and joyful to welcome you, my podcast family, back to the show. And I am also so ready to dive into part 2 of discussing with you what root causes are not. And if you can't hear it in my voice and see it in my eyes, as you finally get to watch these on our YouTube channel, then I don't know how else to tell you that this is one of my greatest passions. And like I shared with you in the last episode, I do not know anyone at this point who has gone deeper into their own education and training around root causes. I've been studying this topic for over 15 years. I'm extremely confident around it. It is my jam. And you are talking to the expert on this topic. And like I emphasized in the last episode, there are so many ways in which you are all currently being misled down long, windy paths on your own health and healing journeys that you simply do not need to be on. But the reason that you're on them is because you are put on those paths by well-meaning practitioners who are limited by their own education, training, and knowledge. And I simply am not. I continue to stretch the limits of my education and knowledge around this topic, and I will quite literally never stop. And alongside of that, in my Research and Training Institute, we will continue to study these issues and to create emerging research to bring out to the world that we will integrate into the mainstream so that we can help to improve the training and education of all of the well-meaning practitioners. Because my hope is that in my lifetime, I get to see all of this stop so that I don't have to keep coming on these shows and talking to my clients and sitting with my clients and patients and loved ones in tears while they cry and realize that they have once again taken a wrong turn on their own healing path. Like I shared in the last episode, there are 8 different categories so far that we are aware of. 8 different categories of root causes. Only one of those is physical. I will talk to you about all of these root causes throughout this root cause series on the show. But what's extremely important that I do today is finish where we left off in the last episode. I'm presenting to you during these 2 episodes, 10 of the most common scapegoats that you are being told are the root causes of your problems. And I can promise you they are not. Many of them are effects, not causes. Some of them are indications of a deeper problem that needs to be investigated. So if you are just joining us for the first time today, I strongly, strongly recommend that you go back to the beginning of the show and enjoy this extraordinary journey from the first episode. If root causes are of concern to you, then definitely make sure you do not miss the previous episode. And if you want to start there because this is of concern to you and you want to make sure that you are not being led down an incorrect path, then please make sure you backtrack. Listen to the last episode where I highlighted 5 of the 10 most common scapegoats that, like I said, you are all being told on a regular basis are the cause of your problems. And just to quickly review what those were. The first was the very famous, the mysterious or unknown root cause. Remember, there is no such thing. We also talked about genes, inflammation, hormones, and other symptoms or diagnoses. Now I'm going to shift my attention to the remaining 5 scapegoats that I want to talk with you about today. Now, I will say this. There are other things you are being told are root causes of your problems that I'm just not necessarily highlighting on these 2 episodes because they are not as common. But I will talk about each and every one of those on this show. Now, the first or 6th, really, to continue from the last episode, 6th most common scapegoat I want to talk with you about today. And these are not, as I'm presenting them, necessarily in any particular order. I first want to tell you a story about something that happened to me personally on my quite long, quite dramatic health and healing journey. So after I had healed from my near-death experience over a decade of chronic physical, mental, and emotional health problems and issues, including the worst of the worst, which for me was what I had been told was IBS and a host of other GI problems, SIBO, Candida. One of those we're going to talk about today on this show, hint, hint, that was never actually a root cause. I had healed from all of those things. And I was in a very, very good place with my health and well-being. I had met my now husband and we were dating. And he and I had been together less than a year at this point. But when we met later in life and we were looking for an extraordinary relationship. And so when we actually met online and we'd been together for a while and communicating and deepening our connection that way. And so at this stage and phase, we'd been together in person for around a year or so. And so we were very serious at this point, very close, and things were going very well. And I was working in industry at the time as an epidemiologist and population health specialist for a very large insurance company, Highmark Blue Cross Blue Shield. I was working at a subsidiary of theirs because I love to serve and I wanted to help the most vulnerable people in our population. And so I worked for a subsidiary that was serving an entirely Medicare and Medicaid population of people. And it was filling my heart. So I was just in a really happy, healthy place in my life. I had moved to my first house in Pittsburgh, in the northern part of Pittsburgh. So shout out to Pittsburgh to any of you who are Pittsburgh fans, Pittsburgh natives, or just love the city in general. I appreciate you because Pittsburgh will always have a special place in my heart. And I really love it there too. So I had just moved into my first house. I was in my postdoc at Harvard, working at a great job, just met my soulmate. Things are going great, right? And I was living my very healthy lifestyle, which health and well-being is a non-negotiable priority for me. So I revolve my life around that value of health and well-being. And I do that with intention. So there was nothing I was doing behavioral-wise that could have, in my opinion, at the time, made me vulnerable to some sort of health setback. But despite all of those things, as I'm living in this house, all this time's going on, and probably about at least 6 months after living there, but it was probably closer to a year. Around the 1-year mark of living there, my symptoms just started resurfacing again, especially my GI symptoms. I was generally not feeling well all of the time. Mentally and emotionally, I started feeling a little more out of balance again. But there was no rational explanation, in my strong opinion, at the time. So, of course, me being an epidemiologist, a scientist, and a doctor, what do? I'm also a root cause expert, continuing my training at that point, but much earlier on. What do? Well, I'm going to go find an answer. So I started investigating. And at this point, mainstream medicine was where I knew I did not belong. And so I went digging. I found an alternative practitioner who was working in the area of functional medicine. He was about an hour drive away. I did a little research, talked to a few of his previous and current clients, and decided that it was worth a shot. So I drove to see this guy, had a couple of sessions with him. And after we talked back and forth, he said to me, "Have you done an environmental test in your house?" I hadn't done that. And when I had just moved into my place, my house, about a year earlier, it was newly renovated. So to be honest, I hadn't even thought that it may even be necessary. So I hadn't considered it. But he said, at this point, I don't know what else to suggest, but I think it's worth getting an environmental test. So I hired this extraordinary man to come to my home to do a series of tests. And he tested for a lot of different things: gas, mold, just a lot of any environmental toxin that I could possibly be exposed to that could be harming me. Now, when the tests came back, it turned out that there was black mold in the house. And so mold was the primary problem and the reason that all of a sudden, all my problems were starting to resurface and I could not make any sense of it. So I had to leave that house. I had to move. And of course, once I did that and I moved into a healthier environment, within weeks, days even, I was feeling drastically better. Now, why am I telling you about mold? You've probably guessed if you listened to the last episode, especially, that it's because mold is the next scapegoat that I want to talk to you about. And mold, my friends, is not your problem. Mold is not a root cause. Now, of course, mold, yes, it is a problem and it is your problem if it's threatening your health and it's in your home or work environment. That's extremely important that it get dealt with. However, bottom line is it's just not a root cause. It's a trigger. Mold does not create or cause disease. What it does instead is it triggers existing viral conditions that have been otherwise dormant in your body. For example, mold is a common trigger of Lyme disease, but it does not cause Lyme disease. Mold will essentially just wear away at your immune system until a breakdown occurs. So this is what was going on with me. Mold had triggered my immune system, which had been at that point built back up again, was functioning optimally, and had been keeping all of the root causes in my body that I had gotten down to a point where they were not threatening, otherwise just dormant. It had worn away at my immune system again. So all of a sudden, those problems started to resurrect themselves. So mold, not your problem. Something else that's not your problem are parasites. So there are two big myths around parasites that I want to break here. The myths are: one, parasites are a cause of your health issues. That is false. Two, worms are a kind of parasite. That is also false. And when I told you guys that I've been there, done that with literally everything, I was not lying. Of course, it probably won't surprise you that along my health and healing journey years ago, along that path, I was told by an Ayurvedic practitioner. I did also train in Ayurvedic medicine and did a lot of shadow work for a long time in that area. Shadowing. Shadow work, something different. We'll talk about on another episode. We will get there, my friends. Oh yeah, we'll get into the spiritual and the energetic because I'm so into all of that stuff too. And it's also very important. But anyway, parasites. Yeah, I was actually told on my health and healing journey at some point by an Ayurvedic practitioner that parasites were my problem. And I was even put on an anti-parasite cleanse and diet, taking all kinds of crazy herbs and pills. So if you have been told this is your problem, it is not. And just know that you are talking to and connecting with and listening to a woman who has been there and done that. I have literally been told that all of these things were root causes of my problems, only to take drastic measures to listen and follow through with that guidance, which actually in the end all backfired on me, created additional health setbacks that I had to again resolve on my own. And so I really want to prevent all of you from going through that. It's just not worth it when I'm existing here on planet Earth. So let's bust these parasite myths together. Parasites are not the cause of health issues, and worms are not a kind of parasite. Parasites can cause severe acute symptoms. And when you have a true parasite infection, trust me, you will know. And quite often, the parasites are so strong that it's either going to be you or the parasite that's going to win the battle in the end. Now, some examples of real parasite infections are malaria, food poisoning, and Toxoplasma gondii. These are true parasite infections, but they are acute infections. A true parasite cannot live in your body long term. So there is no such thing as a long-term parasitic infection, my friends. Let me say that one more time. There is no such thing as a long-term parasitic infection. Now, neither parasites or worms can cause chronic or autoimmune problems, diseases, symptoms, infections, nor can they cause gut issues. The root cause of most gut issues and related symptoms is a low-grade viral or bacterial infection, which again, we will absolutely discuss more on future episodes. And trust me when I say we will be back around the block many, many, many times to talk about this issue of gut health. And is no offense or disrespect to the gut health practitioners out there, but just be aware I have already been there, done that too. And unfortunately, I've worked with the gut health practitioners. And once again, these are well-meaning practitioners, but they're not targeting the root causes of your problems. So if you are being told that things like parasites, SIBO, Candida, hint, hint, we're going to talk about one of these next, are the reason that your gut health is not optimal, you're being misled. That's just all there is to it. So worms do not belong in the same category as parasites, like I mentioned earlier. Now, what's the deal with worms? They can stay in your body long term without really causing you much disruption. So, of course, they're unwelcome, but they cannot and don't even have the ability to attack you like a parasite can and could. Now, what can a worm do? It can strip your body of beneficial nutrients. So I hope that clears things up for you in the parasite and worm category. Now, again, I'm just presenting you today with the basics. We'll be back to talk about all of these topics much more in depth over time. Now, I'm sure I already gave away what the next topic I want to discuss is. And of course, it probably won't surprise you that I have a story about this. This is a personal story, but I want to share with you that I have had so many clients over the years in my health and longevity practice come to me with gut health problems who were told that Candida was their problem and who tried really hard to resolve that problem. I was also one of these people. So how did I get there? Well, if you remember on the last episode, I told you a little bit about the story of my GI issues and my digestive problems. It's a lot. That whole story will be one episode. And like I said, we'll come back to talk about gut health and I'll tell you the whole story. So right now I'm just giving you bits and pieces of it in places where it can be relatable and relevant for you. Now, in the last episode, I talked to you about one of these visits I had to a gut health specialist or a gastroenterologist, and it was my last visit to a gastroenterologist. At that time, I'd been diagnosed with IBS or inflammatory bowel syndrome. I knew that was not my root cause because, as I've already taught you now, inflammation is not a root cause of your problems. It's an effect, not a cause. So in my effort to determine my own root cause, as I was still in training, so I was still limited by my own education and knowledge in root causes, I set out and trekked out into the world to determine what my grand root cause was of my problems. I land in a naturopath's office who sends me home to do a stool test. We send it off to a lab. And again, this is where I want to caution you all, and we'll come back and talk more about testing, but a lot of you are spending a lot of money on all these different tests. Some of them are being done in the mainstream field, but a lot of you now have already branched out into naturopathy, working with alternative and holistic docs, working with functional med practitioners. And I know that these practitioners are ordering you all kinds of tests, looking at your stool samples, looking at your gut health profile, looking at your microbiome, looking at heavy metals, things like that. And let me tell you, that is all really important data and information. But in the end, it's not actually always necessary to determine what your root cause is. I know that for a fact because I've never had one person walk into my practice virtually or literally in person and felt that I couldn't serve them and tell them what their root causes were and give them a pathway to heal them with tests. I've never needed any of that. I've had people bring me tests and looked at them and used them as helpful data and pieces of the puzzle, but it's not really necessary. So anyway, desperate, once again, I end up in a naturopath's office who sends me home with hundreds of dollars, thousands probably. It was definitely thousands now that I remember all the things I did of tests to do at home. I send out all these test kits. I'm sure that this is going to be my big answer. That stool test, I was convinced was going to tell me everything I needed to know. And then I was going to go fix the problem and heal. And I was so excited. I get these results back. I go to the naturopath's office and she tells me that she has great news. And I was so excited. She said, "Your problem is candida." And I was so happy. I was so happy. So she said, "Here's what we're going to do. You're going to go on an anti-candida diet because we have to starve it and kill it. That's the only way. That's the only way." She even ordered me an antifungal that was made at a special compounding pharmacy that I had to drive to go pick up, keep in a special cooler, transport to and from my house in a special container. I spent a lot of money on that drug and I was convinced this is it now. I knew it. I got in the car that day. I had my little stack of documents that were the new diet that I was going to follow. I went home. I threw everything away that was on the no list for all the things that could feed candida. How dare I eat fruit? I threw out all my bananas, all my fruits, all my tomatoes, all my healthy foods because I didn't want to feed the candida. And then I ordered all these anti-candida cookbooks and I was set. And I thought, this is it. This is it. I'm going to heal now. I'm so happy. I can't believe it. And I dove in headfirst and I was the most dedicated and tenacious anti-candida woman you have ever met on planet Earth. I didn't stray from that guidance and that pathway, not even the tiniest, littlest hair. And I did feel some degree of improvement, but 6 months later, I just had this feeling, and you all know what I mean. I know a lot of you listening are on your own health and healing journey, and you're not necessarily in what you would consider optimal health. And you know that feeling. A lot of you have it right now as I'm saying this because I can feel that. You have that feeling inside when you just know that something's not right. Something's off. Something's missing. There's a piece of the puzzle that you just haven't found yet. And I got that feeling. I knew in my heart that had this really been the right answer for me, I should have felt much better and a much larger degree of improvement by that point. And I just had that feeling. And every time I got that gut feeling, that meant that I was off track again. Candida wasn't my problem. We could do an entire episode on this, and I am 100% sure we will do that. And I'm sure we will do that for most, if not all of these topics I'm covering on these 2 episodes. Or Candida. Do you know it's so misunderstood? And do you know that if you've been told Candida was your problem and you believed that or went after it for any length of time, that you've been blaming the messenger all along? Ugh. First, Candida is not a root cause. You have Candida. Why? Because we all have it. In fact, we need it. So let me just help you feel a little better about this. Candida is just a beneficial fungus in your intestinal tract that assists with digestion and absorption. By itself, it is completely harmless. I know. I can feel some of you listening and thinking, what? In reality, Candida plays a role in serious health issues in less than 0.1% of the entire populations of the United States and Europe combined. So from an epidemiological and scientific standpoint, it is very, very rare that Candida would play any role. I didn't say root cause, that it would play any role in a serious health issue. You could have a high level of it and be totally healthy. There are a lot of research studies that have shown this. When we've looked at panels of different types of microbiome compositions, what most practitioners who are well-meaning don't realize yet is that Candida can be an indicator of an actual root cause because it's often accompanied by other microorganisms and pathogens that are harmful to your health. These could be things like the shingles virus, streptococcus bacteria, the herpes virus, the Epstein-Barr virus, and many others. So a high amount of Candida in your body is not a problem itself, and it is not the problem, but it is an indicator that there's something else that needs to be explored and investigated in your body. So treating an overabundance of Candida is almost never what you need to do. Instead, you need to address the true root causes of the problem that are actually causing your symptoms, something that we can easily do together in my practice. P.S. It's also a myth that sugar feeds Candida. Fat and protein. Let me say it one more time because I love fruit. Fat and protein actually are what feed it. The best anti-Candida approach is actually a low-fat and low-protein diet that is high in fruits and vegetables. I know. It's really cool to learn though, right? I hope it's setting some of you free. I remember when I thought I could only eat a handful of blueberries like every couple of days. That's my worst nightmare. I freaking love blueberries. I love all fruit. And I can promise you all that fruit is not a problem. So in general, any practitioner that says something to you like, watch your sugar. Now, this is different for anybody who has conditions like type 1 or type 2 diabetes or insulin resistant types of conditions. And of course, those types of conditions can still receive healthy forms of glucose in the body. So sugar, is a different topic, but we'll talk about that on another show, another time. But let's stick to the subject here today. Now, the second to last scapegoat that I want to talk with you about that's really important, that's certainly not your root cause, is your immune system. If you've been told that your immune system is attacking itself, if you've been told you have some sort of autoimmune cause of your problem, then you need to dig deeper because your body does not and will never attack itself. I've worked with many people who have come to me after being told they have autoimmune problems. And of course, those weren't their problems. And so we resolved them with a pathway that actually helps people heal instead of just manage their symptoms. And I'm sure it will not surprise you. And no, I'm really not kidding. That I was also told that I had autoimmune problems. Now I can tell you that that's not true. I have a very healthy immune system. And I want you to also hear me say this, because as you are listening to this episode, what I want you to remember is that you're not the only one listening. So are the cells and the individual molecules and atoms that make up those cells in your body. That includes the molecules and cells that help to create your incredible immune system. They are responding accordingly. So it's really awesome for them to hear me say that your immune system does not attack itself. Your body does not and will not attack itself. It's actually outrageous. Really think about this. It's outrageous to place the blame on you. Your body does not attack itself. You do not attack yourself. Your body, your immune system, only reacts to being attacked by pathogens and external threats. So even autoimmune conditions like rheumatoid arthritis, for example, can actually be traced to other root causes, such as underlying viral pathogens. And the final root cause or scapegoat that I want to cover, it's hard across all of these to say what's the most important, but I would say this is it. And I really hope that this sinks in for anyone who needs to hear it. They're not your fault. Root causes are not your fault. We were all born very differently. And the truth is, and I'll get into this more as we talk about what root causes really are, things like pathogens and toxins, many of you don't realize this because many practitioners are not trained to know this and to pass this knowledge on to you. But pathogens and toxins, which are forming the basis for the primary physical health level root causes that any human being deals with on planet Earth, can be passed on in utero. So we're all born with a completely different story, with a completely different profile, with a completely different type of load of pathogens and toxins in our body. Now, that just got passed on to us in utero, and we're born with that stuff in our bodies. It's not our fault. And then we proceed to live a human existence where we live on planet Earth and we're surrounded by things that pose a threat to our health and well-being. And our bodies can't help but to absorb all of that and take the hits for us. It's our job, though, to take these things on. As much as they're not our fault, they are our responsibility. And that, to me, is where my work really comes in. Root causes are not your fault. And the things I've talked about on the episode yesterday, or not yesterday, but in the last episode and this episode, these things are not root causes. They are triggers and effects. And there are underlying causes to every single one of them that are related to other root causes. And it is 100% possible to determine what those things are going on with you. But like I said, despite these things not being your fault, they are your responsibility. Why? Because your health and well-being is your responsibility. And you get to create whatever it is you decide to take 100% responsibility for. So I hope that as I'm educating you on this show, I also am helping to set you free to realize that nobody but you gets to create the health and well-being that you want. Nobody but you gets to decide what your outcomes and results are going to look like. And there are always other answers. So listen to your body. If a practitioner is telling you that something is a root cause and you just don't feel that to be true, it doesn't matter if you know the answer. It doesn't matter if you know why you feel that way. Trust yourself and know that the answer is out there. And I'm always here. But taking personal responsibility for your health and well-being is so important because nobody but you can do that for you. And no doctor, not me, not any practitioner, healer, helper, server out there of any kind can create the health and well-being that you're looking for. Nobody else but you can bring you back into alignment, mind, body, and spirit. And earlier on in my practice years ago, I tried to help the people who did not want to take personal responsibility for their health and well-being. And each one of them chose of their own free will to continue standing in their own way by not taking responsibility. It's why I don't work with those kind of people anymore, because I can't fix anyone. And I cannot take responsibility for creating optimal health for you. But I can guide you with the most confidence in the world. I can walk alongside you on that journey hand in hand. I can get in the trenches with you when you're having a setback. I can help you bring yourself back into wholeness and alignment, mind, body, and spirit. I can help you get out of your own way. I can't restore your optimal health and well-being, but you can. And I will always be here to remind you of that. I will always be here to serve and guide. And I hope that you learned a lot from this episode. In the next episode on the root cause series, we're going to start talking about what exactly are root causes so that I can educate you and help you start to understand how you can figure out what your root causes are and what steps you can take to start targeting them. I hope you all can feel my love, my positive energy coming through today. I'm sending you off also with a big wave of healing energy in case you need some today. I'll see you next time. Thanks for listening to today's episode of The Bridge, a transformational health podcast with Dr. Elizabeth Rodgers. To learn more about my work and ways you can get support to transform your own health, head to my website, drelizabethrodgers.com. Don't forget, Rodgers has a D and a G. You can find a link in the show notes too. I hope you can feel the big boost of positive energy I'm sending all around right now. Can't wait to connect with you on the next episode.